Welcome to the newest edition of Bet Weird at NFL Week 11. I'm Erin Dolan, joined here by Eric Moody. Eric, how's your morning going?
Hey, the morning's going great. Hey, we got cold weather outside, we've got NFL football, and we got Thanksgiving that's coming up. Hey, living the dream.
It is extremely cold. I am not meant to be in the cold whatsoever. Connecticut is just way too cold for me. But nonetheless, you mentioned Thanksgiving. It is coming up. It is next week. We are gearing up. We are preparing. But Eric, my hot take is that nobody really likes Thanksgiving food, or else we would eat it more than once a year. I do not like Thanksgiving food. Do you?
I do, but just like you mentioned, hey, it's all about the once a year extravaganza. So, I do like turkey, but I must admit I only eat it like once or twice a year.
Exactly. So I feel like if we only do it once a year, I feel bad for these turkeys, because I'm like, is anybody really enjoying this, or is this just because we have to do this? But nonetheless, I'll be headed to my grandmother's, might bring some cereal or something with me. At least they're open to me not liking the food and whatnot. But let's get into this week's NFL games. We have so much coming up in this show, so stay tuned with us. And let's look at these market movers. So we see the line moved out for Carolina-Baltimore. That's currently Baltimore minus 13. Line moved down in favor of Pittsburgh, and the line also moved down in favor of the Chargers. And one of the biggest shifts, look at that Philadelphia-Indy line. Philadelphia opened minus 9.5, and it's all the way down to minus 6.5, with that total also going up a point. Let's bring in Dan Graziano, who's live in Indy, to talk about this game. And Dan, we were kind of surprised that the Eagles lost to the Washington Commanders on Monday night. How are they adjusting and, fixing their game plan heading into this game?
Well, the front office adjusted. They signed 2 defensive tackles, in Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph, and it sounds to me like both those guys will get some action today. How much remains to be seen. But in terms of the players and the coaches and how they navigated the week, everybody I've talked to said it was the same as always. TJ Edwards, one of their linebackers, I had a conversation with this week. He said, even after wins, Nick Sirianni is always drilling down on the details, showing us our bad plays, trying to get it corrected. So coming off a loss, yes, for the first time this year, but the Eagles say that this week felt like any other.
All right, Dan, so Jeff Saturday has been the head coach of the Colts for about 10 days now. So what did the team say is the biggest difference in playing for him as opposed to Frank Reich?
Well, I think it's just, I think when a head coach gets fired, Eric, I think that has a sense of a way of waking up a locker room. So, the players around here, they look at themselves in the mirror and they say, well, is it something we did or something we didn't do? And so, Saturday's an interesting hire. Everybody's been over the controversy around it, how unusual it is. But, Eric, I worked with Jeff for 3-4 years. Like, he's as genuine a guy as there is, and that's been the response from inside the locker room and inside the coaching staff that, hey, let's get this figured out. They're coming off a win last week. Season's not over yet. Whatever has happened to this point has happened. Nothing we can do about it, but let's see what we can do from here, and he seems to have the place energized.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see how he does in this one. But Dan, before we let you go, just quickly, what is your favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
My favorite Thanksgiving side dish is the stuffing.
The stuffing, okay.
Yeah.
Some people call it dressing, stuffing.
Yes.
We were talking about it at the top of the show. I personally don't like Thanksgiving food. I think there's a reason why we eat it once a year.
I heard that.
But yeah, for me, I'm out on that. But
I can't agree with you there.
I like the atmosphere of family, but not so much the food. But Dan, thanks so much for joining us here this morning on Bet. We'll have you back soon enough.
Thank you.
All right, Eric, let's jump into this game. The Eagles right now 6.5-point favorite. That total coming up to 45.5. Do you like the side total, or you got a player prop for me?
Yeah, I got a little bit of both for you, almost like a Thanksgiving side dish, Aaron. But anyway, I digress. So I do like the Eagles in this game because they lost last week. So they had their first loss of the season. I think they kind of underestimated the Washington Commanders, and they got bit by it. And so I don't expect that to happen this week. So I do like the Eagles to cover the spread. So they're going up against the Colts. And we saw the Colts defeat the Las Vegas Raiders last week, a team that's giving up the 5th most total yards to opponents and the 5th most points allowed to opponents as well. And so it was a great victory. The Raiders are 2-7, but I'm like, this is the Eagles that they're facing, and they're going to want to bounce back from last week's debacle. And one thing about the Colts, I think they still have offensive line issues. That's a line that ranks 20th in run block win rate and also 30th in pass block win rate. And I just don't think that the Eagles defense is going to be generous at all. So they're going to go all out to shut this team down. And I'm back in the Eagles. I also like A.J. Brown a lot in this game. I was very disappointed in A.J. Brown's performance last week, and I know fantasy football managers were as well. Caught 1 of 4 targets for 7 yards. And this is a receiver prior to this game that he has averaged 8.6 targets and 87 receiving yards per game. When I watch A.J. Brown on film and I watch the Colts cornerbacks, whoever's lined up against him, it's a matchup that he can dominate and win. So I expect them to have a huge game, especially with Dallas Goedert being out. And so I do like A.J. Brown over receiving yards and also to score a touchdown in this one. So that's what I got for this game.
I like it. I was a little surprised that the line had moved from -9.5 all the way down to -6.5. It was a great win for the Colts last week, but again, it was against the Raiders. I mean, it's not that big of a win, and of course the Eagles want to bounce back after their Monday Night Football loss, and I actually think losing for the Eagles was one of the best things that could have happened to them, because now that pressure isn't on them. They needed a wake-up call. They need to get things together and whatnot going forward. Now, I know, Eric, you mentioned that defense and how you think it's going to be great for the Eagles today. I also think that, which ultimately is going to make Matt Ryan throw a pick. Now, right now, he's got 9 interceptions in 9 games played this season. That's tied with Davis Mills for the second most behind Josh Allen. But as for the Eagles, they lead the league with 13 defensive interceptions. If you look at C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he leads the league right now with 6 interceptions. I just feel like this is one of those spots in which Matt Ryan, he's going to be trying to be the hero in this game because they want to get that second win under Jeff Saturday, and just ultimately the Eagles defense is going to come up big. Now, I know it's juiced to -148. If you do shop this around, you will find it at a lower number. Just want to mention that because I know that is really juicy right now in Caesars. But I do think that Matt Ryan will have a pick in this one. Eagles defense comes up big. I like how you said the Eagles will cover the 6.5. I also think that will happen. And keep in mind, the Colts have only covered the first half spread in 1 game this season. That was last week against the Raiders. They're terrible in the first half of games, and the Eagles are really good in the first half of games. So keep all those things in mind. But for me, I'm going to have to go Matt Ryan to throw an interception. Let's continue on the board. We're going to talk about the Jets versus the Patriots. The Patriots -3.5 point favorite with a total low at 40. How are you playing this one, Eric?
Yeah, with this game, I do like the Patriots to cover the spread at home. So you look at Bill Belichick, you look at the New England Patriots defense. Like, they've had success against Zach Wilson, especially over the last 3 games, and I think that trend will continue. What I did notice in the last game that these teams played was that New England's defensive front was able to generate a ton of pressure on Zach Wilson, but they didn't have to blitz a lot to do it. And so, look at that defensive front going up against, the Jets' offensive line, and I think that's a matchup that they can dominate. I even see the Jets in this game even having trouble, really generating and establishing the run in this game. And Zach Wilson, I'm like, he has struggled mightily. He has a very low QBR whenever he's under pressure. And I look at this Patriots team. I'm like, they're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games before the bye week. Furthermore, the Patriots are also 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games following a bye. So I do love the Patriots here. And another player that I like in this game to score a touchdown, the first touchdown scorer would be Ramondre Stevenson. Since week 3, he's averaged 20.5 touches per game. And I do like the Patriots offensive line going up against this Jets defensive front. I think they can have some success in this game. And Stevenson scored a touchdown in 3 of the Patriots' last 4 games. But you look at this Jets defense, I know they are much improved, but this is still a defense that's allowed 10 rushing touchdowns in 9 games. So I think Stevenson's going to have a monster day.
And I just want to mention quickly that total. It was at 40. It's come all the way down to 38. I do believe that this will be a low-scoring game. But, Eric, we're kind of on opposite sides here. I would rather take the points with the Jets just because, one, this is a low total, and I feel like since this is a big divisional matchup, a ton is on the line in terms of the AFC East. I just think that in this one it might be tighter than you think. I know that they had just previously met 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and you have the Patriots who won at MetLife. They won by 5 points in that game, and Zach Wilson did throw 3 interceptions. I don't see him being that terrible again. Okay, he's not a good quarterback by any means, but I don't see him being as bad as he was in that game. Eric, you also mentioned the defensive line of the Jets. It has continued to get better. I think they might be able to come up big in this one. It's just one of those things that sticks out to me. I like it that you get it at 3.5 and not 3. I think the Jets might be able to put up a fight because the one thing about the Jets is they continue to surprise us, okay? They hit over their win total, something we didn't think would potentially happen this season, and their defense has really been carrying them. As long as Zach Wilson can just get some touchdowns, don't throw picks, I think that the Jets will be able to cover the spread of 3.5. Let's get to another game that has just been all over the map. We weren't sure if this game was going to happen, then it gets relocated. There's just so many things going on in terms of this game that I feel like we could do a whole show on it. But let's talk about the Browns versus the Bills. The Bills right now laying 8 points, that total all the way up to 50. Remember, it dropped during the week. I think I saw it as low as 42.5, and then after it got relocated, it has gone all the way up to 50. So, Eric, I'm sure you have a few plays in this one. How are you looking at it?
I do. There's 2 plays in particular. First up, I'm going to go with the Browns, and I'm going to take the points with the Browns. So here's why.
I like that.
One thing football players covet are routines. Whether you're playing at the high school level, college level, or NFL level. And I was smiling as we were leading into this because it has been a chaotic week for the Bills. Like their meetings, their team meetings, position group meetings had to get moved to Zoom. Their practice schedule was all over the place. They didn't know if they were going to be able to make this game. They couldn't fly. They ultimately had to drive to Detroit for this game. And so that's just disruption. Plus, they were supposed to play at home. And so I think that'll play a factor, in this game. It's very hard to quantify that. But I also look at how the Bills over the last 3 games, they failed to cover, and they've given up the 5th most rushing yards to opponents over the last 3 games. And they're going to play against a Browns team with one of the most explosive running backs in the league, and Nick Chubb. And so I think all these factors will play a part. So I do like the Browns in this game. I think it'll be a lot closer than people expect. I think that the Browns could win this game outright, just considering all that disruption. There is one play from the Bills that I do like. I do love Gabe Davis in this game. You look at the Browns secondary, they've really struggled all season going up against number 2 receivers. They've also given up a number of deep passes as well. And Davis, that's the role that he plays in this Bills offense. He's averaging 22.7 receiving yards per reception. And so with the high point total in this game, I think Davis can have a monster game and score a touchdown.
Yeah, I feel like when you look at this total, you feel that a lot of players could potentially have big games because we could see a lot of scoring. And also, this could be just a really sloppy game because of, like you said, all this disruption, all the different things that are going on. Buffalo Bills didn't get in till last night, and I'm pretty sure at one point they had to cancel a practice and do it over Zoom this week. So I do think, like you talked about, Eric, that disruption could end up hurting the Buffalo Bills, which is why I'm looking at Nick Chubb to go over 75.5 rushing yards in this one. He's averaging 100 rushing yards per game. This guy is accounting for 63% of the rushing yards for the Cleveland Browns so far this season. I also think you could take a look at Kareem Hunt. Both these guys could have huge games against the Bills defense that in the last 3 weeks has been terrible against the run. They're allowing the highest yards per rush overall through the last 3 weeks. Now on the season, the Buffalo Bills have been good at stopping the run in general. They're ranked 7th, but we're talking about Nick Chubb here. We're talking about Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb is an absolute monster. I also, Eric, really do like taking the points with the Cleveland Browns. I'll talk about that in a little bit, maybe teasing a little bit of our big dog, little dog, but I do really like the Cleveland Browns to potentially be able to, even like you said, win outright. I mean, the Buffalo Bills have not lived up to expectations the last couple of weeks. Really good to start the season, but I mean, they lost in overtime last week. Josh Allen, he's thrown 10 interceptions so far this season. I don't know what's going on with him. Obviously, the arm could be playing a factor, but nonetheless, I do think the Browns are able to keep this closer. I like that it's a high-scoring game. I'm going Nick Chubb over 75.5 rushing yards. All right, let's continue with another game, an interesting one. We got the Cowboys as a 1.5-point road favorite, and the total at 48.5. Eric, what are you doing in this game?
Yeah, there's two angles that I would like to play in this game. The first one is Tony Pollard. I do like Tony Pollard over 65.5 rushing plus receiving yards. So I know the word on the street is that Ezekiel Elliott is going to play. But he's missed 2 games. He hasn't had a stretch like that, missing consecutive games in his career. And I just don't know what type of workload he's going to get. He could be active, but it's like, how many touches is he going to get? So I do believe that Pollard will be actively involved in this game. For those that play fantasy football, I actually have Pollard ranked higher than Zeke. And then in my own personal projections, I have Pollard projected for more total yards than Zeke in this matchup. And so from a betting lens, I would go with Pollard over rushing plus receiving yards. Also in this game, I do like the Cowboys to score over 24.5 points in this game. The Vikings defense, this is a unit that's allowed 26 or more points in 2 out of the past 3 games. They've allowed 312 rushing yards. Yes, 312 over their last 2 games. And we know the Cowboys are a very capable offense. They've got playmakers at every single offensive position. I think that's something that they'll leverage in this game. So I think they'll score a ton of points in this matchup. So, Aaron, those are 2 bets that I would make on this matchup between the Cowboys and the Vikings.
Well, you are very brave, because for me, this is my Erin on the side of caution game that I'm just staying away from. I was shocked on Sunday when I saw this line open, Dallas -2.5. And of course, with our Daily Wager show, we have these Google Docs that come out and it says, what's something that sticks out to you? And that was the first thing that I wrote in on Monday morning. And then we've seen the line come down slightly. Dallas is now a 1.5-point favorite. But right now, because I asked Caesar Sportsbook this last night, 56% of the money is on the Dallas Cowboys to cover, while 60% of the tickets is on the Vikings. So this line just overall not making a ton of sense to me. We know the Dallas Cowboys just lost in overtime, and then they come onto the road against an 8-1 team, and it's just not adding up why they're a favorite. I think maybe odds makers think eventually the Vikings are going to lose a game or something like that, but they are coming off a win over the Super Bowl favorites right now in the Buffalo Bills, and they played really good in that game. So it feels like one that could potentially go either way, which is why I'm ultimately going to stay away from it. It just, nothing's really making sense to me about this line. Maybe there'll be like a last-second backdoor cover on this short line, but for me, I'm staying away from it for good reasons. All right, let's get to our big dog, little dog. Word on the street is you have a little dog for us this week, Eric.
I do. I may shock people with this recommendation, but I do like the Rams this week as my dog. And I think many bettors are really just shying away from the Rams right now. Even though they have Matthew Stafford back, no Cooper Kupp, and that's huge. But could you look at Cooper Kupp? I'm like, this is a player who's accounted for 35.7% of all their receptions entering Week 10. That's the highest mark in the league. His loss is obviously devastating. So I think this is a great opportunity, really, for this Rams team to prioritize the running game. And this matchup against the New Orleans Saints really provides them a golden opportunity, in my opinion, to do so. You look at New Orleans. I'm like, they rank 24th in run-stop win rate. They're also dealing with a number of very important injuries on defense that could impact things as well. So I did factor that in. But, unfortunately, for the Saints, like, you got Andy Dalton back under center. Like, the Saints are 2-7-1 against the spread with Dalton under center. And I think the Rams will keep this game close, and I do believe they could outright win this game. So the Rams are my dog of the week.
All right, I like it. I'm going to go with the big dog in this one. I'm going with the Cleveland Browns, taking them with the 8 points. I talked about this a couple times throughout the week, but I do think the Browns are going to be able to cover in this one. We know it's at a neutral spot now, but both teams are coming off Week 10 losses. So you got the Bills who lost in overtime to the Vikings, and you got the Browns who got basically dominated by the Miami Dolphins. But I think just all things considered, with the disruption of this week, it will be a tighter game. Also for the Cleveland Browns, we know, as I talked about, they got Nick Chubb, you got Kareem Hunt. They can run all over this Buffalo Bills defense that has been leaky against the run in the last 3 weeks. I don't know what is going on with them, but they just cannot stop the run. I think Nick Chubb has a huge game. I think it's going to be a close game, and nonetheless, I do like the Cleveland Browns as my big dog, little dog. But Eric, hang tight. We're going to bring in another guest, a special guest we always have on every Sunday. We're going to throw it out to Tyler Fulghum, bring him in. He's coming in from Vegas and from home. Look at this, Tyler, a little setup here. Look, the background's all blurred out. Do you like him being from home?
Yeah, it's nice that I didn't have to wake up at like 3:30 a.m. To get into the studio here in Las Vegas local time. So very, very happy. I got a few extra hours of sleep this morning before I hopped on with the ladies and gents on Fantasy Football Now.
Love it, love it. All right, well, we got to get your take on some of these games. We're going to start off with the Lions versus the Giants. Giants laying 3 points. That total at 44.5. How you playing it?
Yeah, I'm going to go under here. Both of these teams, let's start with the Giants. When they win games, they win with good defense, taking care of the football, maybe a few splash plays from Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones with their legs. We know that so much about the weather in Buffalo. Well, New Jersey's not that far from Buffalo. It could be inclement weather there as well. Maybe not 6 feet of snow, but I don't think it's going to be ideal outdoor conditions for a football game for these two offenses. So win, lose, or draw, I think the Giants control tempo, slow this game down. Even against a bad Detroit Lions defense, I think they probably only need 20, 21 points to win this game. They are the home favorite, so they lean on Saquon. They shorten the game. They play good defense, and maybe with the weather as well, possibly affecting that, the game comes in under 44.5.
Yeah, it's important that you bring up weather in general, because we're at that point in the season where you really have to focus on that. Just like at the beginning of the season when teams would play in Miami, we're like, oh gosh, it is so hot there. Now it's getting really, really frigid, real frigid. All right, here's another game I wanted to ask you about. It was my Erin on the side of caution game. We got to talk about the Dallas versus Minnesota game. Right now you got Dallas -1.5, that total at 48.5. How you playing this one?
Yeah, I understand the caution that you're exercising there, Erin. Love the branded segment you have. It is strange that an 8-1 Minnesota Vikings team that's tied with the Philadelphia Eagles for best record in the entire National Football League. They're at home, and that's not SoFi Stadium home field advantage. That's one of the best home field advantages in all of football. Yet the Cowboys are the team that's favored by 1.5. I am proceeding with caution when it comes to the side. That's why I will officially play the total over in this game. I think it will be fast-paced. You have two very good offenses, and we can give Kirk Cousins a boost when he's at home and doesn't have to deal with a road crowd. Of course, there's Justin Jefferson and those weapons on offense like Dalvin Cook. Then on the other side, of course, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb finally had a big blow-up game. Ezekiel Elliott will be back to mix in with Tony Pollard. With this game being under the dome in the fast track, with both offenses liking to play fast-paced and both offenses having the capability to create big plays with the weapons that they have, I think this game goes over. Whoever wins, I don't know, but I think it is a close, as the spread would indicate, but high-scoring and entertaining affair today in Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how the Vikings look today against this Dallas defense. All right, one last game got to ask you about. We got Cincy versus the Steelers. Right now the Bengals are laying 3.5 points with the total at 40. Side total or player prop for us, Tyler?
Loved that my guy Eric Moody was taking my Rams as his small dog today. I love the logic you had with your big dog. Aaron, if I was in that segment, the Steelers would be my big dog of the day.
Okay.
3.5, 4. If you can find the 4 there, take it. But look, you got a low total of 40. And Aaron, you know this as well as anyone. The difference TJ Watt makes for this Pittsburgh Steelers team overall and the defense especially is night and day. Go back to week 1 when they played Cincinnati on the road, and TJ Watt was just absolutely wrecking the day for Joe Burrow in that offense before he left with the pec injury. He had the interception, a couple of sacks. I believe the Steelers were leading that game when he left. Then, of course, without him for the next 8 or 9 games, the team kind of falls apart. The defense is struggling. Get him back last week against New Orleans. I know New Orleans is not the greatest offense in the world. Don't get it twisted, but Steelers defense held the Saints to 10 points at home. This game is in Pittsburgh again, and TJ Watt, he is the defensive player of the year for good reason, Aaron. He is a complete difference maker, so anything over a field goal, I think, is great value on the home dog Steelers here. It's the second divisional game of the year. The Steelers are desperate, and they have their biggest dog, TJ Watt, back, so I like the Steelers plus the points.
Yeah, TJ Watt is absolutely no joke. So I do like this one. We're bringing back in Eric Moody because it's now time for our Take It to the Bank. And let's look at last week's results before we get into this. All right, we have two wins last week. Eric had 2. I'm confused by this. Wasn't I in this last week? I don't know. Anywho, so Eric and I was Justin Fields. There we go. Eric and I had some wins. Tyler just 1 loss. It's all right. Tyler was coming into that show on a 5-0 win streak. We cannot blame him. You cannot, continue the win streak at all the time. Anyway, Tyler, why don't we kick it off with you? Give me your Take It to the Bank.
Yeah, Jeff Saturday ruining my Take It to the Bank last week. I do kind of like the Colts this week, but that's not my Take It to the Bank. My Take It to the Bank this week is a total going under with the Jets and the Patriots. It's a low total, one of the lowest on the board, but I think it's for good reason. This game was played in Foxborough, so Bill Belichick and his defense, which has been really good this season, will have that extra benefit, that extra boost of crowd noise against Zach Wilson, who at this point in his career, the Jets are winning games, not necessarily in spite of Zach Wilson, but by limiting Zach Wilson. He's thrown the ball 20, 23 times. Robert Saleh, I think, realizes that he can't have these long developing offensive plays. He's got to get the ball out quickly. And I like the game plan they're using for Zach Wilson. It's just not conducive to scoring a lot of points if you're the Jets, especially now that they don't have their big home run hitter, Breece Hall, in the backfield. So on the other side, Mac Jones, boy, has he not taken a step back or regressed this year? He's been pretty bad. And the Jets defense is really good. Look what they just did to Josh Allen. They have proven this year that they can stand toe-to-toe with some of the best QBs in the league. Mac Jones is certainly not playing like one of the best QBs in the league. So I think we have 2 signal callers on both sides that are kind of limited. I think we have 2 really good defenses and 2 really good defensive play callers and head coaches on each sideline. So I think points will absolutely be at a premium today in Foxborough. Might take it to the bank, under 38 in Jets-Patriots.
I like the way you're thinking there. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, Zach Wilson hasn't been great. Mac Jones hasn't been great, but those defenses could come up big. All right, Eric, give me your Take It to the Bank.
All right, so my Take It to the Bank for this week is Marquise Valdes-Scantling over 44.5 receiving yards. So there's no Juju Smith-Schuster. There's no Mecole Hardman. And so MVS should see a steady stream of targets from Patrick Mahomes, who had a great game last week. 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. It was actually his 12th time in his career he's had such a game. And he actually broke a tie with Ben Roethlisberger for the 6th most such games in league history. So you look at MVS. I'm like, he surpassed 44 receiving yards in 6 games this season. Now, I know he's only averaging 4.7 targets per game this season. He's obviously going to get a lot more in this game given the circumstances, but MVS also averages 17 receiving yards per reception. So I think he exceeds expectations in this game, whether you're looking at him from a betting perspective, fantasy football as well. He's my take it to the bank for this week.
All right, I like it. I'm going to go to the Falcons-Bears game and take an anytime touchdown score since it's one of the highest totals on the board for today. We're going Cordero Patterson, anytime touchdown score. It's kind of moving down. It originally was at plus 135 this morning, but the Bears defense ranks 28th against the run. And get this, you got a Bears defense that has allowed 17 rushing touchdowns to opponents this season, which is the worst in the league. Of those 17, 12 of them have been running backs. I do think the Falcons will lean on Patterson in this game in particular, just given how bad the Bears defense has been. Over the last 3 weeks, they've allowed opponents to average 38 points, and running backs have been super successful. They've allowed 7 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games. I know the Falcons can sometimes be a little bit wonky in terms of how much are they going to end up using Patterson, but in this game in particular, I feel like he is going to find the end zone and score a touchdown. Now, Tyler, before we let you go, I know you have one more play for us, and it's going to be in soccer, which we haven't talked about in a while on this show, so feed the people with a good pick.
Yeah, we're talking too much American football. Let's get the global football onto bet today. And, of course, the World Cup starting in Qatar. And I'm obviously going to pay attention when the Americans are playing. USA opens up their group play with Wales tomorrow, 2 Eastern, is when that game kicks off. And listen, I'm not, someone who watches a lot of international soccer. I can name maybe a handful of players on the United States team. Obviously, I'm going to be a Patriot. I'm going to be rooting for the Americans. But I also want to be entertained. So at plus 140, plus 145, something like that, why not see at least 3 goals in this opening group stage play matchup between the United States and the Welsh? I want to see American stars like Christian Pulisic light the back of the lamp or find the old back of the onion bag. So hopefully the Americans have more than the Welsh in this one, but as long as I see at least 3 goals, this is a winning bet. Hopefully we get a 2-1 American win. That way we're happy in all ways. The Americans getting those 3 points in their first game, and we see at least 3 goals and a little bit of entertainment on the pitch in Qatar. So
I like it.
Plus money bet, over 2.5 goals. Why not, Erin?
Absolutely. And like you said, we'll be rooting for USA and whatnot. But Tyler, thank you so much for joining Bet this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day. There was a couple people walking in the background in and out of doors, so I got a little bit nervous. Wasn't sure if maybe you were safe, but we wanted to make sure we got the show in because that was most important. So enjoy the rest of your day.
I will grab a weapon and check the house and make sure no one is here trying to kidnap me.
Yeah, the AirPods don't help you there because now you can't hear what's going on. All right, Eric, let's continue with our Before We Let You Go segment. I don't know if you have a soccer play, an NBA play, anything that you want to hit on, go for it.
Yeah, I do have a play on the World Cup, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, man, how can I follow that up after Tyler, had some guests back there. But anyway, I digress. So for the World Cup, you got United States, you got Wales. My betting recommendation is for both teams to score in this game. And I think both sides of this matchup have significant strengths that kind of play into each other's weaknesses. Like you look at the pace at which Wales plays. I think that's a good thing for the United States to kind of get them somewhat out of their comfort zone. But then while the United States high press can make things potentially difficult for Wales, it could also lead to scoring opportunities just depending on the conditioning, of the team. So I would say with the United States, looking at their performance over the last couple of months, they have had some goal-scoring issues. While Wales, they've only had really one clean sheet over their over their last 9 matches dating back to March. So I just rather bet on both teams to score a goal, because even if there's not an outright winner and there's a tie, you can still cash the bet. So that's how I would attack it, Erin.
I like it. And I feel like everybody's just been talking about this World Cup. I feel like it's something we're going to continue for a few more days here. All right, I'm going to go with the NBA because, as you know, I don't have time to look into some soccer bets. So I'm going to go with the Nets and lay the 7.5, which is something, I never tell you to back the Brooklyn Nets, but it feels like this is just one of those spots. They're 7-9 against the spread on the season, so they haven't been great. But the Memphis Grizzlies, they're down bad. No Ja Morant. no Desmond Bain. I mean, in this one, if they can't cover this number against a team that is completely riddled with injury, don't worry, I won't be back on bet and ever tell you to back the Brooklyn Nets ever again. Hopefully things will start turning around for them. They're still, one of the quote-unquote favorites to win everything. People still have high expectations based on their roster and whatnot. Maybe they'll fix things up defensively. But just given the injuries for the Memphis Grizzlies, I would say to lay it with the Brooklyn Nets in this spot. But Eric, here we go. That was our latest edition of Bet. We're going to be back here tomorrow, and then Eric will be back here next Sunday. So make sure you tune in for NFL Week 12 then. Good luck, guys, and hopefully you win some money today.